Hello, welcome to part two of Sacred Geometry as the basis of the four elements. In part one, we laid down the foundational ideas, and now we are ready to learn the details of how zodiac signs are created, and specifically how the four elements of fire, earth, air, and water are created. So it is generally believed in astrology that the zodiac signs are a symbolic language, that there is this correspondence of what's going on in the sky with what's happening with life on earth through this symbolic language of archetypal images and mythic stories. And what we have found out in very recent times is that there is a process in nature that creates the zodiac signs. Now, this is a change of the paradigm. It's a new conceptual framework. It's a whole new way of understanding what's going on. And when there is a new paradigm, it's rather unsettling because a lot of things that we have assumed are not quite right, or they're incomplete. It's not that there isn't a symbolic language, there is. But what's happening is that this symbolic language is built on something else. It is born out of something else. Okay, so it's a new way of understanding. And what's interesting is that we understand this quote, something else, in amazing detail, in incredible detail. And I'm going to start taking you into that detail in this video of where the zodiac signs come from. And we're going to focus again specifically on the elements within the zodiac signs and how they are created within the 12 zodiac signs. Okay, so what we started to learn in part one, and I'm going to summarize this quickly. If you did not watch part one, I'm going to throw out a lot of fancy terminology very rapidly, and you may just feel like, oh my God, this guy is way too geeky for me. This is like, whoa, take me out of all this geeky number stuff. But if you watched part one, we took a half hour to slowly build this up, and it's really not that intimidating. It's quite simple. So let's just summarize what we learned and start getting into the details of this. What we learned, let's jump down to the bottom paragraph here, is that spin is fundamental. The Earth is spinning on its axis. The Earth is revolving around the Sun, which is also a kind of spin, a kind of circularity, a kind of motion that scientists describe as having an angular momentum. And even the subatomic particles have this angular momentum. Some properties that we can think of as, quote, spin, even though it may not be a physical spin. And then, of course, the sun is going around the galactic center and so on. So spin, this circularity or elliptical quality. And what we're proposing is that if you put growth cycles into the spin, poof, you get a zodiac. All you have to do is make this one guess that it's not just that things like to spin, but there's a geometry within that spin. There's more to it. And of course, in life we discover there's always more, deeper and deeper layers to everything. So we're proposing that there's this additional layer, additional attribute of spin where growth cycles are involved. And the growth cycles are called Pisano periods, which is you take these Fibonacci numbers and you put them into a rhythm, or what we call in mathematics a modulus function. And for example, if you do modulus 6, you can do any number, but if you do 6, every time you get to 6, you subtract out the 6's. So the Fibonacci numbers up at the top are 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. But when we get to 8, we subtract out the 6, we get 2. So I'm showing the 2 in bold, and so on. And when you put the Fibonacci numbers in this modulus 6, there are only 24 of them. Unlike the Fibonacci numbers, which are infinite, they just go and go and go and go. When you put them in this rhythm of 6, at some point they repeat, and they repeat after 24 numbers. Well, that's interesting. 24 is 12 times 2, so might just be a coincidence. But we're going to see that these 24 numbers create the 4 elements. So let me show it to you. Let me repeat again before I start showing this to you. The idea is that there are vibrations in life, very fundamental frequencies that are generated by the very primal forces of nature. And these primal vibrations create structures. And one of these structures is the zodiac. And then out of the zodiac, the myths and stories develop. That's the process. When you see the details I'm going to show you in this video, and in the part 3 is even more mind-boggling, where we see the intricate details of how the elements are created. And what's also helpful here is we find out what fire really is, what earth, air, and water really are. They're not, fire is not exactly fire, earth is not exactly earth, it's something similar. And in understanding what they are, we get a better interpretation. So this is useful for astrologers. So this is, as I have here at the bottom of the slide, this is an extremely elegant and powerful theory. And a wonderful thing about a great theory is not only is it, as we said in part 1, a basket in which you can hold a lot of different things in this organized, simple way, but it implies certain consequences. And we're going to see what this theory implies and how it really draws out what we actually think about the elements and confirms and refines our understanding. And this will continue into part 3 as well. Okay, so I'm starting with Pisano period 6. What about all of the others? Well, what happens if you do Pisano period 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13? A large number of them create 12 sections of 30 degrees. And a few of the others create other kinds of structures, such as the nakshatras and the lunar mansions. So this theory, this model, explains why there are zodiac signs, why zodiac signs are the dominant form, because they show up in so many Pisano periods. And the ones that create other divisions, for example, let me show you this from Wikipedia. Here's a Wikipedia article on Pisano periods, and it tells us over here that Pisano period 6, I'm highlighting this row, Pisano period 6, this is showing us the Pisano periods, has 24. See this 24? There are 24 numbers, as I just showed you, in the in the Pisano 6, and this is what they are: 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 2, etc. And it comes back to a 0. It even tells us there are 2 cycles. Look at this. Even the fundamental mathematics given to us by mathematicians who have no interest in astrology whatsoever, even they are explaining that these 24 numbers that comprise Pisano 6 are grouped into 2 groups of 12. The 12 zodiac signs, as we will see in a minute. And these are the numbers. And the reason they're grouped into 2 groups of 12 is we come back to the 0. 0 is the beat itself. It's like when you're in a waltz and you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The zero is like the one. It's coming on the beat. It is the beat itself. It is the six which becomes a zero. And so that zero is a very important number in the Pisano period. And it shows up twice. It's always at the beginning because by definition we start with zero and then it appears again halfway through. Well, that's just the beginning of this. I'm going to start showing you the intricate details. But what I want to mention now is look at Pisano period 3. You know, the very first one, Pisano period 1 is just 1. It doesn't go anywhere. Pisano period 2 has 3 divisions. That would be, you know, if you're thinking of it as a zodiac, it's like beginning with each a sign of fire, like Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. It's division of 3. You don't get complex divisions with these low Pisano periods. As you get up to higher numbers, you start getting the intricate configurations that make the zodiac. But what I want to show you is that Pisano period 3 creates 8 divisions. There is also a structure in space of 8 divisions. There's not just 12. There are the 28 lunar mansions, which are created by Pisano periods. There are the 27 nakshatras, which are created by Pisano periods. I have a whole video that explains how nakshatras are created. And there are many, many Pisano periods that create the 12 signs, including the 4 elements within them. But when you occasionally you see one that creates a different structure, like 3 creates 8. And of course, those are the 8 phases that we have, the lunar phases. Most of you are familiar with the 8 lunar phases. So that's a structure in space also created by a Pisano period. My point is this. The Pisano periods, many of them create the zodiac. That's why the zodiac is fundamental. There's also Pisano 3 that creates the 8 phases, the 8 lunar cycle phases. And the 8 lunar cycle phases are not just phases of the sun moon. They are phases of the zodiac. There are even hints of this in some of the ancient mythological and religious literature. So for example, when you look at the Bible, in Ezekiel 1:10, all these translations are basically the same. Let's just take the new King James Version. As for the likenesses of their faces, each had a face of a man. Each of the 4 had the face of a lion. Each of the 4 had the face of an ox. And each of the 4 had the face of an eagle. Well, what do we know about man, ox, lion, and eagle? Those are images of the 4 fixed signs. So the man is Aquarius. The ox is Taurus. We usually think of it as a cow. It's a bovine creature. In this case, an ox. The lion, of course, is Leo. An eagle, as many of you know, eagle is another image for Scorpio. And in Revelation, there's the same 4 images. In fact, let's read it here, because when you read it in context, it's even more interesting. It says, and before the throne was something like a sea of glass as clear as crystal. In the center, around the throne, were 4 living creatures covered with eyes in front and back. So there's this image of a throne and 4 creatures around it, and they are the lion, the calf, the man, and the eagle. There we are again, showing up periodically. And in some of the ancient astrology, there's the idea of the fixed signs as these protectors. Protection, they're fixed, they stabilize things. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. It's fascinating how the uh, how the Pisano periods create all of these structures in space that we're familiar with. Okay. Um, and also, pagan celebrations, it's been a ritual to celebrate halfway between the beginning of the season. So this idea of the division by 8 is there. Not the primary one. The primary one we always hear about is the 12 signs. But it's amazing how the Pisano periods perfectly reflect the structures we use by repeating the 12 breakdown over and over again in many, many Pisano periods, and then occasionally some of the other ones. Okay, now let's see how the 12 signs and the elements are created. We take Pisano period 6. Well, let me backtrack one little thing and show you what we mentioned at the end of part 1. We're going to look at 6, 9, 12. Pisano period 6, 9, 12. They're very similar. That's what I'm going to cover in this video right now. The next video we're going to describe 10 and 5. The Pisano periods 10 and 5 create the real magic, the real complex magic of the elements. But some fundamental qualities of the elements are also laid down by 6, 9, and 12. So we'll learn about these fundamental ones in this video, and then the really complex, intricate, magical ones in the next video. They're all important. We need to learn about all of these to get a full appreciation of what the elements are. Okay, so we take the 24 numbers that comprise Pisano period 6, and we just lay them around the circle, and we put the zodiac signs there. So there it is, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 2, and so on. And then we notice something very interesting if we add the numbers. So the key is you add the numbers. Let's take the first half of the fire signs. First half of Aries is 0. First half of Leo is 3. First half of Sagittarius is 3. 0 plus 3 plus 3. I have it up here. 0 plus 3 plus 3 equals 6. We are in Pisano period 6. Excuse me. So when we reach 6, we're back to 0. Is 0. The second half of fire, 1. Second half of Aries is 1. Second half of Leo is 4. Second half of Sagittarius is 1. So I had 0 plus 4 plus 1. I'm sorry, 1 plus 4 plus 1 is 6. And if you do this for all fire, earth, air, and water, both halves, the first half and the second half, they all come out to 0. This is how resonance is created, a similarity and a weaving together, and a bringing together, and a kind of spin, not a physical spin, but a connectivity, or what they call in the Vedic tradition the sutras, the wisdom, which are the threads of life. So there's a tapestry, a cosmic tapestry, threads connecting this together. And the way they're connected is simply by adding them. So Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are like patches in a quilt. Think of this as like a quilt with 12 sections. And they're connected together, like they're the same color. We could think of fire as red. When you put them together, you're back to 0. You're back to the beginning, to the all or the nothing, to the oneness. You're back to the vibration you're in. You're back to the on beat. And what's amazing is that every half, the first half and second half, of all 4 elements all produce 0. What's amazing about this is that we're taking Fibonacci numbers where you add the last two numbers. We put them into a rhythm. It doesn't intuitively feel like there will be any pattern to this. We're not expecting any pattern. They're just numbers that get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But there's a beautiful, simple pattern. So, is this a coincidence that you take the Fibonacci numbers, put them into a rhythm, and then you see this correspondence of all of the elements? This is just the beginning. As we dive into this and we see how it relates to interpretation, it becomes more and more obvious this is not a coincidence that the mathematics and this ancient belief system handed down to us are corresponding exactly together. Now, when you look at this, these 8 combinations, they all become 0, which means they're all intimately connected together. But of course they're doing it through a different sequence of numbers. First half of fire is 0 plus 3 plus 3. Second half is 1 plus 4 plus 1. Look at the totals. The totals for both halves of fire are 6. For earth and air, the first half is 6, but the second half is 12. So in other words, if you take the second half of earth, let's do it quickly. Taurus, second half of Taurus is 2, Virgo 5, Capricorn 5. 2 plus 5 is 12. We take modulus 6, means you subtract out 6's, and you're back to 0. But it is interesting that it's 12. You can think of it as an octave higher. It's like you have the note A, and the second half of Earth goes to the next octave, to an A an octave higher. By analogy, I don't know if it's quite literal, but you can think of it that way. It comes back to the beginning an octave higher. And what we notice here is that fire is the simplest. It does not go up any octaves. First half of fire is 6, second half of fire is 6. Earth and air are exactly the same. First half is 6, second half is 12, and water is reversed. Now we will see this kind of patterning over and over again where two things happen. Fire will be at one extreme and water at the other, with earth and air in the middle. The other thing that happens is that the masculine signs, fire and air, will be the same, and earth and water will be the same. And typically the fire is simpler and the water is the most complex. Now, we're starting to get into the astrological interpretation. Fire is innocent, it's youthful, it's exuberant. Water is more complex, more it's more thoughtful or more introverted. It's taking in a greater complexity of concepts. So, and the earth and air fall in between. We're also going to see that air is connected to the ability to relate. But right now, we have fire simple, 6, 6. We have water starting with the higher octave 12, being a little bit different, starting off with the complexity of this higher vibration, and earth and air in the middle. So it confirms the basic idea of what we expect. These frequencies, you can think of them as frequencies, as fundamental vibrations of life that create structures, is the zodiac. That's what the zodiac is. And then out of these frequencies and structures, the stories develop. They are actually, the stories and myths are actually a secondary level. This is the primary level of what happens. And very, very important, we find out that water is not just emotion, air is not just mental, etc. Air is actually has more to do with relationships, and fire has more to do with innocence and directness and enthusiasm. That's the fundamental quality. And what the astrologers did is they took something in nature that is most similar to it, but understanding the essence of what it is helps with our interpretations. And then we do not make the mistake of saying air mental. Okay, let's dig in and look at more of these, and you'll see what I'm getting at. Okay, and by the way, this is Pisano 6. 6 is how we relate, because 3 is easy and unobstructed, right, like trines. 2 is sharing, me and you. 6 means how do we facilitate connectivity. And air and the fire signs do it in a direct and simple way. Water signs do it in the most complex and thoughtful way. So when you're relating to Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, we know that there's a lot going on with these signs, right? You're entering a whole world of feeling and sensitivity. When you're dealing with fire, it's, and you're relating to them, it's a more simple, direct kind of thing. Okay, now let's look at the components. So the components of fire are 0, 1, 3, 4. Aries is 0 and 1. Leo is 3, 4. There it is, 0, 1, 3, 4. And Sagittarius is also 1 and 3. So 0, 1, 3, 4. Let me do one more example. Earth signs. Taurus is 1, 2, 1, 5. So far we have 1, 2, 5. Capricorn 4, 5. 1, 2, 4, 5. There it is. So that's where these numbers come from. What do we notice? Earth and water are the same. This is where we get our gender. And when it comes to relating, which is what 6 Pisano period is, the feminine signs, earth and water, are effective, direct, and also 5 means organic, growing, and flowing. So the feminine signs relate directly and openly and organically. The masculine signs share 2 numbers in common with the feminine signs. Fire has 1 and 4, and then throws in 0 and 3, and then air shares the 2 and the 5, and throws in 0 and 3. So the masculine have 0. 0 means a kind of idealism, a kind of mystic vision. So the masculine signs are very idealistic about relating, and they can write poetry and be very, very idealistic, and the feminine tends to be more direct and real about it, you could say. So all of these qualities are equally important. So we see that the feminine, the earth and water, are built of the same things, and they create this vibrational resonance between them. That's why earth and water are connected. They are connected vibrationally at the very primal source of life, where spin happens and growth happens, this very primal functions. It's like a cosmic and universal genetic code for existence. Okay, and you can dig into the details of this more if you want to. Okay, this just repeats what I just said. Masculine signs have grandiose idealism and vision. Feminine signs have integrity. Fire has integrity. It has the 1, which is integrity, but cannot relate well. It's missing 2. Air has the 2. Air is able to relate well, just as the feminine signs do. So you see that the masculine signs are not completely different from the feminine. They share things, and that gives them the ability to resonate and connect together as well, and then they have their distinctive qualities. Okay, fire lacks 5, so tends to lack the ability to intuitively sense a way to grow and evolve. Fire gives this ability to intuitively grow and evolve. Okay, so we don't have to dwell too much on these details, because we're going to find in the next video in this series, part 3, is where the real details of exactly how the elements work becomes manifest. This is just setting a basic tone quality, just a basic framework for the details that will happen. But even at this basic level, we see how the elements are created from Pisano periods. Okay. This just repeats what I just said. Now let's look at 9. What we're going to see is that 6, 9, and 12, those Pisano periods are all very similar to each other. And 9 also creates a series of 24. So here's Pisano period 9. It will go up to 9, so it's 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. It goes over 9. The next number would be 5 plus 8 is 13. And subtract out 9 becomes 4. And there they are. Also split in half, 2 groups of 12. So Libra starts another 0. So of course, Pisano 6 and Pisano 9 also emphasize not only the elements, but also how the first 6 signs are then reflected again in the last 6. So many fundamental concepts of astrology are in these Pisano periods. It doesn't look like it when you just see the sequence of numbers, but when you lay it out and you start adding them and you start seeing things like where the zeros are, you see this, all the details of the zodiac. Now notice, when we add the first half of fire and the second half of fire, just as we did for Pisano 6, we do not always end up with 0. So unlike Pisano 6, not everything ends up with 0. Let's see, the fire, the first half does come up with 0, second half comes up with 3. So the total of the fire is 3. The grand total for fire is 3. I have it here at the bottom. Fire, first half is 9, second half is 3 equals 12. Subtract out 9 gives 3. What do you notice? The total vibration of fire is 3. Total vibration of air is 6. Total vibration of earth and water is 0. 9 is the number of wholeness, healing, connectedness, being a part of everything around you. And the feminine signs are whole and complete. They are also the ideal, the vision, because 0 is this grand vision, the ideal of the great mother, of Kuan Yin, of Mother Mary, all these images of wholeness, completeness, healing as feminine qualities. There we see it in earth and water. Now, as astrologers, you know that men can have more feminine signs in their chart than women and so on. So, everybody's composed of these fundamental qualities. And notice that the fire and air are made of the components of 9, because 9 is 3 times 3. It's a squared function. And so it's made of 3's, and we see the fire is 3, the air is 6. So the masculine signs have the ingredients for wholeness. They are like the protectors. They build wholeness, and the feminine signs have wholeness. And notice air is 6, which is relating, and fire is the innocent 3, which lacks 2. 6 is 3 times 2. So again, the emphasis on air and being able to relate, air can connect to the feminine signs of earth and water more easily than fire, because it has times 2, which is relatability. And that's what this is telling us, is that air is masculine, but it's also relational. Libra obviously is relational. Me and you, partnerships. Gemini is also connecting and relational. It's curiosity. Aquarius is building the networks, the organizations. It's about relatability, connecting ideas, associating things. These are relational signs. A better word for air signs, rather than mental, is relational. So we're starting to get some practical conclusions. And when you think about it, do the greatest intellectuals of all time have more air signs than other signs? They don't. It's not true. I mean, if you look at it in science, your Einsteins and whoever, you look at it in the arts and literature, they don't. The air signs are relational. Okay, it's not intelligence per se, it's relatability and connectivity, which has an association to mental, and that's why we get away with calling it mental. Okay, I hope you're starting to feel this, how this new paradigm not only explains how astrology works and where zodiac signs and elements come from, but it describes more accurately what it is we're talking about, and doesn't lead us into images that are not quite accurate. Okay, so here are the grand totals, by the way. If you add each component of fire, 0 plus 3 plus 6 plus 1 plus 7 plus 4, you get 21. So earth is 18. We're in modulus 9, so we subtract out 9, so we get 0. And water is 36. Again, exactly what we expect. The water signs are usually more complex, more overtones, higher octaves. There's something deep and brooding and mysterious about water signs. It's not just Pisces with its mysterious way of associating things, and Scorpio with its mysterious deep emotions. Cancer also has deep and mysterious sensitivities. So that's what's going on with water signs. And some of the water signs get a negative reputation for this, for being complex and more multifaceted, and more brooding and introspective. But there's nothing wrong with it. And it doesn't have to be dark. Okay? I think we have a bias sometimes in life that we just like the fire sign, something simple and direct, and what you see is what you get. But there's greater richness with water signs. Every sign is equally beautiful and brings something beautiful to our lives. Okay, so I've talked about this. You can pause this video and read these details, just what I just explained. And here are the components of the signs. The masculine signs have 0, 3, and 6. Notice that earth and air have 0, 3, 6. The feminine signs, only water has 6. So we see that water has a 6. Earth does not have 0, 3, or 6. So it might seem the opposite of what we would expect. The masculine signs have the components of 9, 3, and 6, because 9 is 3 plus 3 plus 3. And the feminine signs do not. They have the 1 and 8. So what this is actually telling us is that the masculine signs have, in a way, a greater need, a greater need to build connectivity and wholeness and family and community. And the earth signs, in a way, already have it. They have the 1 and the 8. They do it, they manifest it. I don't know how you exactly you want to think about this, but what is clear is that the gender, the connection of the earth and water is there. They have certain numbers in common, that are distinct from the masculine signs. So you see the earth has 1, it shares that with fire. The did I say that right? The feminine signs have a 1, earth and water. They share that with fire. They also have 8, which they share with air. So what happens is the signs of the same gender will have things in common and share one of those with the opposite gender. Okay, let's look at 12. 12 also creates 24. So Pisano 6, 9, and 12 are all very similar. They're variations on a theme. And if you add the first half and second half of each, you end up with 0 for all of them. They all come out to 0. And interestingly, the first half of water totals to 24. All the others total to 12. 0 plus 9 plus 3. So in other words, first half of Aries is 0, first half of Leo is 9, first half of Sagittarius is 3, 0 plus 9 plus 3 is 12. They all add up to 12 with the exception of first half of water, and again this is typical with the water being more complex, more varied, more intricate, you might say. But they all reduce to 0. There's your resonance. So in 6, 9, and 12, the elements are consistently there. That's why there are elements, because they resonate and they build the basic frequency that you're in. They all total to 0. So for some reason, the way this works is you add the numbers. Every time we learn something, we also have new questions. So I don't understand exactly why Pisano periods add numbers together, but that's how they work. You simply add the numbers, and that creates the quality, the combined quality. The way to get the combined quality is add them together. You add fire signs all together, you get 0. Add earth together, you get 0. Add air together, you get 0. Add water together, you get 0. They all complete each other and make for a wholeness and a basic quality. They all have an affinity to each other. And you can think of it like this. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are components of the wholeness. Because once you reach 0, you're total, you're complete. So they're pieces of the fabric. Their sutras, the threads are woven together to create that wholeness among each element. Okay. So very often fire will stand out a little bit unique, or water. Fire may be a little simpler. As we saw in Pisano 6, fire was slightly simpler than the others, or water may be slightly more complex. By complex, I mean it goes up at what we could call an octave, goes all the way up to 24. Other than that, it's just saying they're all tied together. The elements are there. So that's what I wanted to cover. Oh my gosh, we're at 44 minutes already. So I like to keep these down to a half hour. But in the next part of the series, in part 3, we're going to look at Pisano periods 5 and 10, and this is the part that gets really amazing because we start seeing the details of how each element works at the 5 and 10 level. And the reason the 5 and 10 levels are so important, these Pisano 10, is because 5 is the number of organic growth. 5 steps outside of the crystalline structures of 1, 2, 4, 8, or the soft patterns of 3, 6, 9. It is the fluid, dynamic force of life. 5 is also connected to the golden ratio because the 5-pointed star, the proportion of each segment of the pieces in a 5-pointed star comes out to the golden ratio. Maybe you're familiar with that. If not, don't worry about it. All I'm saying is that 5 is related to this organic, natural harmony and growth cycle. And it becomes the living force of how things go. And this is where we see the full richness of the elements and exactly how they operate come out. But this level of looking at the 3, 6, 12, I'm sorry, 6, 9, 12 is also important because it sets the basic tone and connectivity and quality. And so in the next video, we'll get into the more details of exactly how the elements work. And what we've learned, I want to repeat this point, is that fire is not actually fire. Well, we know that in astrology already. We just say fire is enthusiasm. It's like the fire element. But, what's really happening is that the fire element and the fire signs share something in common with the vibration. And if you look at the vibration, the simplicity, the directness, the tendency of fire to lack relatedness, not a lot of two stuff going on with fire. That's the quality of the fire. It's in the vibration. So the things that we say when we interpret and we think of fire like that is very accurate. We get thrown off when we make too close of a connection and we start saying that air is mental and water is emotional. Well, it's not exactly emotion. It's more of a complex, intricate thing going on. And we're going to find out about this introversion that works into the water signs in the next video as well. And these are the vibrations and qualities that actually make the elements. Okay, thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.